Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm talking about another episode directed by Richard Thomas from season 4. This is The Fox. If you're enjoying these, please do hit like and subscribe. There's a fox that's been going after chickens. Ben, meanwhile, has the idea that he wants to start selling furs, so he's got a trap and he's going to start trapping animals. John shows him how cruel these traps are and suggests that maybe Ben consider a box trap instead. Ben isn't necessarily thrilled about that, but he does indeed build a box trap instead. We also find out that there is going to be an anniversary of the Battle of San Juan Hill when the Rough Riders with Teddy Roosevelt charged up San Juan Hill. Grandpa can't go because John is going to be away and Grandpa's supposed to mind the mill and take care of work that needs to be done. But this whole battle and the Rough Riders and everything is something we heard about throughout the series and a story that Grandpa told over and over. And when the radio isn't working one night, he reenacts this story again. The kids go, tell the story, and he does, and we all join in. And Grandma seems to be very distressed by all of this and is argumentative about during the telling of it. And we're not quite sure what that's about. But John Boy's fascinated because he has found out that Adventure Magazine pays 2 cents a word for stories that they buy, but he's trying to figure out what he could possibly write about. And we see the wheels clicking in his mind as he watches Grandpa tell this adventure story. John Boy goes to see Mr. McCreary, played by actor Frank Ferguson, because he's in charge of this anniversary. And he has this idea that maybe they could have the anniversary at Walton's Mountain. And they even talk about the idea of reenacting the charge up San Juan Hill and doing it on Walton's Mountain. Mr. McCreary is very excited about this idea and thinks that they could have a parade and he could get a lot of publicity. And so the two of them get busy with all their excitement about this idea. Now, when John Boy comes back and proposes this, Olivia is very upset about this idea. She and Grandma think it's terrible.
See, what we had in mind, Mr. McCreary and myself, was to have a reenactment of the charge up San Juan Hill with the actual veterans who were there that day, reliving the battle.
I think that's a terrible idea.
Basically glorifying war and making it seem like fun to charge up a hill and do battle. John Boy's a little surprised by this reaction, and Grandpa says he will have absolutely nothing to do with it. So this comes as a surprise to John Boy. He goes back to Mr. McCreary, who says it's too late. Everything's in motion. So John Boy has gotten himself into a little bit of a pickle there. I thought it was absolutely adorable, this scene where we see Maud Gormley, played by the adorable Marie Earle, is sitting on the porch. Grandma comes out, and this is just like a lot of comic sense here, some humor for the Waltons.
Good Lord.
We get to see more of Ellen's sense of comedy, which was just so finely tuned. So I love this little bit there where she gets startled. Maud has come to say that her cat Prudence has run away again. Well, as it turns out, Ben has caught Prudence in his box trap. So they do return the cat to Maud. However, Ben does catch the fox, and everybody is giving him the evil eye because his plan is to kill this fox for its fur. And we're all disgusted with that idea. And Elizabeth totally argues with him about it. He just feels like, well, this is his plan and that's what he's going to do. Grandma shares with Olivia that she had not told Grandpa that she was expecting John because she knew how he really wanted to go and do his patriotic duty. He wanted to join the war and go off, and she didn't want to saddle him with this sense of fatherhood and make him feel trapped by it. But what caught my attention there was she was speaking as if John, being pregnant with John, was her first child, and yet we've always talked that Ben was John's older brother. So I'm not quite sure whether it was just the way the scene was structured that was confusing, or whether it was another case of just a writer not knowing this aspect about the timelines of John and Ben. As it turns out, Mr. McCreary calls John Boy to say that he's going to have to call off the reunion gathering at Walton's Mountain because only 3 people are going to be able to make it, and none of them were enthusiastic about charging up the hill. So they're going to go back to their original plan and just have the gathering in town. There were numerous scenes where we saw Mr. McCreary. These would have all been shot in one day because every one of them was in his office. So they would have been able to bring the actor in for just one day and shoot all of his scenes in the one day. This was more cost effective because they only had to pay the actor for one day. They only had to have the set and use that for one day. And because it really only involved John Boy, who was around all the time anyway, it was a pretty easy thing to just knock that off. And that's what they will typically do when they have an actor that they can shoot out in one day, basically. The dilemma about the fox is resolved when Olivia is really smart in this case. She doesn't come to Ben and say, "You will absolutely let that fox go." She talks to him about, the feelings and thoughts of the fox and what kind of life would this be for, because Ben then says, well, maybe I won't kill it, maybe I'll keep it as a pet. And she sort of has him think about what this would mean for the fox and being trapped in a box and not being able to be free or have his own family. And Ben finally recognizes the validity of everything Olivia's saying and feels compassion for the fox and lets the fox go. Grandpa has gone up into the mountains until this reunion's over because he doesn't want to have anything to do with it. John Boy goes up to find him and basically tell him that it's been called off anyway. But Zeb confesses that the whole way the charge happened and the stories he's embellished over all the years weren't really the way it happened, that in fact Zeb was not, in his opinion, honored to be a member of the Rough Riders. That he actually was given the only job that he feels they thought he was qualified for, which was tending the mules. So he's been embarrassed by that, but he has, he confesses that he has enjoyed creating this story and remembering it the way he's created it, and that after telling it so many years that way, that it's almost as if it's become real in his mind, that that's what really happened. So mostly he was just embarrassed for it to be found out that that wasn't really what happened, and that in fact he played no pivotal role in that at all. John Boy and Grandpa come home to find that there is company. There is Bob Allerton and his wife who have stopped by. They're there for the reunion, and they have come by to see Zeb, and we hear this wonderful story about how, as the charge started, that Bob was injured and that Zeb protected him, tied off the wound in his leg with a bandana that had come from Grandma. It had been a wedding present, and she had given it to Zeb when he went off to war. And Grandpa has always said that he planted this bandana at the top of San Juan Hill, but now we found out that indeed he wrapped it around Bob's leg and then ultimately carried him beyond the enemy lines, to safety, and basically saved his life. So in fact, he was one of the heroes of that day. So this, of course, changes the whole way in which everybody, including Grandpa, views his experience about that charge up San Juan Hill. In Earl's final narration, he says that he did submit the story to Adventure magazine and it was rejected with a terse note, not interested in the Spanish-American War. Now, I have no idea if Earl did in fact submit a story that got a terse rejection letter, or whether that was just more of Earl's, clever writing that found that was a nice way to wrap up this story. That's what I have for you for this segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons about the episode The Fox. I'll be back with more Behind the Scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.